Long bones are one of the 5 different types of bones that are found inside our body, and they contain long curved shafts that basically give the bone its strength. Now, long bones are found in the fingers and the toes as well as in the arms and legs. Now, long bones can be divided into 3 different regions. We have the upper region known as the epiphysis, we have the middle portion known as our diaphysis, and what connects our epiphysis to our diaphysis is a section known as our metaphysis. And these 2 sections are also found on the bottom of the bone. So we have the epiphysis on the bottommost and the topmost. We have the middle section, the shaft, that's our diaphysis. And we have the metaphysis that connects our epiphysis to our diaphysis. So let's discuss the individual components of the structure of our long bones. And let's begin with this purple section found on this side as well as on this side, which is not shown. So this is known as our articular cartilage. So articular simply means that's the connecting point between the bone and our joint. And we'll discuss what the joint is and what types of joints we have in our body in a future lecture. So basically this consists of a type of cartilage known as the hyaline cartilage, where the hyaline simply means it's transparent. And this hyaline cartilage connects our bone to our joint. Now, the next portion we're going to discuss is our epiphysis, and the epiphysis contains a special type of bone structure known as our spongy bone, also known as the cancellous bone, as well as our trabecular bone. And it's called trabecular because the structure resembles a honeycomb. It resembles a sponge. Now, inside the spongy bone, which is not dense by the way, so that means it's relatively light and flexible, inside the spongy bone, we have a specialized region known as the red bone marrow. And the red bone marrow is where we basically produce our red blood cells as well as our white blood cells. And the process by which we produce these blood cells is known as hematopoiesis. So hematopoiesis takes place in the red bone marrow of our spongy bone inside the epiphysis of our bone. Now, let's move on to our metaphysis. Inside the metaphysis, we have a special region known as our epiphyseal plate. Now, the epiphyseal plate is basically the region where in children as well as young adults, that's where our bone grows and elongates. It basically increases in length. So this plate is found in our metaphysis section of our long bone. Now, once our human basically becomes a full adult, when they reach the age of 25, this plate essentially stops growing and the epiphyseal plate turns into our epiphyseal line. That means it stops growing. Now, let's move on to this long section that actually consists of our curved shaft. This is known as our diaphysis. So the long shaft region of the bone is called our diaphysis, and this contains a section known as our medullary cavity, also known as the marrow cavity. And this is basically the innermost portion of our cell. Now, this small layer that basically lines the innermost portion is our endosteum. The endosteum is basically a covering of the innermost portion of the bone. Now, right next to our medullary cavity, we have this white portion shown by this section here that basically goes around the bone in both directions. This is known as our compact bone. And the compact bone is also known as the cortical bone. This is a very dense and a very heavy portion of the bone. The compact bone basically contains the yellow bone marrow, and the yellow bone marrow is responsible for actually storing the adipose tissue. The adipose tissue, or the cell, contains the cells that store our fat in the form of triglycerides. Now, this compact bone also is responsible for giving our bone strength, for giving our bone tensile strength as well as our compressive strength. And it's our compact bone that consists of the individual units known as osteons that we spoke about previously. So the long shaft region of the bone is called our diaphysis. This contains our medullary cavity, also known as the marrow cavity, which is the innermost part of the bone. This is this section here. Now, the lining of the inner portion of the bone is known as our endosteum, while our outermost lining of the cell, so the membranous fibrous covering found outside the entire bone, is known as our periosteum. Now, the periosteum basically is involved in bone healing and bone growth, and that basically means inside the periosteum we have these cells that are capable of differentiating into osteoblasts, where osteoblasts are the cells that are involved in bone growth as well as bone healing. Now, the periosteum covers the bone, so it is also involved in a protective function. It protects our bone, and it also serves as the attachment points for tendons that connect muscles to our bones. So this is the structure of our long bones.